Hello and welcome to this new episode of Open Tech Will Save Us, in which we try to understand the social impact of software and how open source can make it more positive. Today our focus is on privacy in analytics. We have three guests to give us a different perspective on the matter. Pnu comes from Exodus Privacy, a non-profit which tracks the trackers. He will tell us more about what Exodus Privacy does and what it doesn't do and why it matters. We should then have a better idea of what trackers and their potential dangers are. We'll follow with Gael from the E-Foundation. Gael will focus on what the E-Foundation can provide not only to advanced users, but also to everyday people who are not necessarily tech-savvy. This involves mobile phones, services, and explicitly not Google. Finally, Nat Christie from Element will give us the perspective of design and product management team. If trackers are bad, why do vendors keep using them? Are they really necessary? Is it possible to do without? And can they be used in a responsible manner? Let's find out. Pnu, can you tell us more about Exodus Privacy?
Hello everyone, thanks a lot for having me. Let me share my screen so that you can see a couple of slides I have. Here it goes. I think you should be able to see it now. If it's a bit flaky, it's on purpose. It's not a problem with your stream. Okay, so thanks for the intro. I think you summed it up pretty well. What we will talk about today, I will try to keep it short so that we have some time for questions. I think that's the most interesting part for everyone. I'll just start a timer on my side. We'll talk about the behavior of mobile applications, and especially trackers, and what is the consequence of this presence of trackers in applications for our privacy, and what we do or we try to do against all of this, and what you can do in the same. So a quick sum up, what is Exodus Privacy? So it's a French association. Actually, it's saying group of French activists. I think it's more like French-speaking activists because I think we have at least one member from Switzerland now. But most of our members are from France. We're a non-profit, which was founded 4 or 5 years ago. We have an undefined number of members, quite small, and it varies because of everyone's free time and occupation. So everyone is just giving the time they have. So obviously some people have more during some time. We have strict legal rules. I will talk about why it matters later on. And we do everything free and lib, and open source, sorry. It's really important for us for multiple reasons. The first is that we want to have it as transparent as possible so that everyone can replay our analysis and verify that the result is good. The second point is that it allows people to actually use it and do something from it or even improve it, which is the whole point of this. What is our goal? In a very short sentence, I think it's pretty well summed up. We try to make people aware of the permanent tracking on smartphones. So we don't directly do anything against this. Our main goal is to really make people aware and that they have the right information about what is happening on their phones. And then they can actually do something against it if they want to, but at least they have the information. We give the information to like regular people, but also journalists and regulators if they want to do something against it. At least they have it, this information. How do we do this? The main tool we are developing is the tool which is called Exodus. It's a privacy auditing platform which identify trackers by static analysis. It's quite important that this is static analysis. I will just tell, I think, the next slide or the one after that. And what is this tool? How I told you before, this is a transparency tool which will just tell you what is in the application. There is often this comparison that your application is like the cake, the final cake. And if you just have the cake, you cannot know what was the recipe, what was the ingredients which were made into the cake, put into the cake. So Exodus is like you put the cake in it and it will tell you, okay, there is this in it. And you can decide, okay, this is way too much sugar, so I don't want this cake, I will take another one. This is a screenshot of an old version of Exodus, but I think it didn't change much. This is, I think, a really good example. This is the weather forecast app for the main weather entity in France, which is a public entity. And you can see there is 21 trackers in it, 12 permissions. Once again, we don't say, okay, this is bad. Okay, there is a red color, but it's not like this is bad. It's like, okay, there is 21 trackers. Do you think it's fair? Do you think it's not fair? You can decide. We have obviously opinion, but we let you decide on this. But I think the main question here that can come to you is, what is a tracker? What we call a tracker, and what can it do? The very generic definition of it is that it's a piece of software, so it's a piece of your Android application in this case, which is meant to collect data about you or your usage of the application. There are a lot of examples of very different trackers. Google Analytics is obviously one you heard about, I think. There is Timo, which is a French one. We heard from the Financial Times like yesterday, I think. They made an article of a Russian one, which, as you can guess, there are some implications today, which a couple of weeks, months before we couldn't think of. So there are obviously trackers from every country. And there are different categories. We detail it on our website. Some are due to, okay, I want to get some information about how you use the app to improve it. There are some to get information to sell you ads, so to make more money, to monetize the app. Some to just know who you are in order to identify you, and many other categories. Basically, on Exodus, you have a tracker profile for each tracker. We have something like 425, which is publicly available. Some are quite detailed, like this one, which is Flurry, so something made from Yahoo. You can see who owns it, where is the primary location. It's once again really important for you and for regulators, because if it goes to the United States, we know that this could have some implications. Now, if it goes to Russia, this could have as well. Some tracker pages are way less detailed than this, because it's really a hard work of really trying to find what the tracker does, where it is hosted, who made it. It's really hard because the companies who make trackers sometimes buy themselves, and so they change name. It's really the website often just redirects to another company because they just change. So that's why this profile is not always as detailed. This is just a community work, which means that some people are helping us to say, okay, I found a new tracker. This is this information. What does it do? And we just put it then to Exodus after some verification. How we detect them? This is some static analysis. This is quite important because just for a scale perspective, we have like 200,000 apps, I think. So we cannot just do a long and complicated analysis. We need to make something quick. If you go to our website and submit an application, it will take some seconds before giving you the results. So it doesn't like start the application, play with it, see what data is sent. So this is one of the limitations. It will just tell you, okay, there are these trackers. We know what these trackers can do. We don't know what they do in the application, like which data is sent, where, when, etc. How does it find it? It just looks for the classes in the application. So we use some open source tools first to download the application from the store and to get some details like the name. We use AndroGuard to get the permissions, the code version and certificates, and we use DexDump, which is actually a tool from Google, to extract the list of classes. So basically the list of functions from the Android application. And then we make a quite simple match. So it's really not that complicated. We get the file, we get the Dex files from it, then the Java classes, and we have a very long list of tracker signatures. We can compare, and if it matches, we say, okay, the tracker is in your app. Is it activated? What does it do? We don't know it, but you have the information. Should it be in your app? Maybe yes, maybe no. If you have like a public service, like a COVID-19 tracking apps, which has a tracker, maybe that's problematic. If you have a banking app where you really don't have so much choice to use it, you can say, okay, this tracker is bad or not. This is just an example to just show you even more how does it work. It's basically, okay, you have the list of functions, and you check the signature, which is just here, and then it matches. So, okay, there is Amazon ads. Which tool do we provide? We provide a couple of tools. As I said earlier, to give information to different people, like everyone, the regular people or developers who wants to improve their app and detect in their own applications. So the first is the Exodus web platform. It's available on the internet, so everyone can go to this through this link, and you can say, okay, I want to check how many trackers are in my favorite weather forecast app. You type the name. Usually you find it. If you don't find it, you can type the handle or the Google Play link directly, or the F-Droid link actually. And if it's not present, you can ask for the submission and get the results in some seconds. And there is a part as well that we added later on, which is that some tips on how to better manage your privacy. So to tell you, okay, now you have the information, what do you want to do with it? How can you improve things on your end? We have as well an Android application. Currently, it's only available on F-Droid, which is alternative application store, which only stores open source applications. And they are really strict on which app can go and which app cannot go. I won't go into details right now at why we are not on the Google Play anymore, but we try our best to get back there. I think we should go sometimes, but I won't make any promise because we made earlier and it's still not there. What the application does, basically, it's just a helper because it will get all the application on your phone. It will get the list, and for each application, it will get the result from Exodus, and it will tell you, okay, this application has that many trackers, that many permissions, without having to type the name of application on the platform. And on the latest version, you can as well like sort them, see by trackers, like what is your top trackers on your phone, to see, okay, is it Facebook that you have most, or Google, and whatsoever. Just a couple of words. We have as well Exudify, which is basically a tool which adds the number of trackers directly from the Google Play Store. Again, a little helper if you need. And we have Exodus Standalone, which is a tool I think you use at Elements, which we provide for developers who wants to scan their own applications before they submit it to the store. You can use it to just check how many trackers you have. You can use it as well if you manage to find an application which we cannot scan, for instance, if it's a paid application or if there is some geographic restriction, sometimes it doesn't work. If you manage to download the APK on your computer, you can scan it with this simple tool. And the last one, which is the tracker investigation platform, so ETIP. It's basically the database that I was talking earlier, where everyone, our whole community is going there, creating trackers, modifying them, and we check if they are good before sending them to Exodus. So there is like 600 or 700, I think, trackers there, and only 420 on Exodus. Okay, I think I'll go quick on this part. We have a lot of applications. I think one important point that I didn't say is that we don't scan any applications by ourselves. What I mean by this is that our users have to go to the website and say, okay, I want to scan this one. So the number of application, which can seem big, it's very, very little compared to every application in the Google Play Store. I don't have the number, but I think it's way bigger. I don't remember. But we are sure that we only scan the applications which are used by our users. So we have a quite representative application set. And we have a REST API to provide this data in other forms so that some researchers can make something out of it easier way than just going to our website. We make as well some pedagogic content. We try to make some kits so that anyone can use to actually provide some awareness training, to people to help them understand what is the problem with privacy and what to do against it. This is a quite old statistics, but they are fairly still the same. I checked earlier. Obviously, what you can find is mostly Google, the 4 top ones. I think Google Analytics now is just under Facebook login. Let's just switch number 4 and 5. But mostly the top 10 is like Facebook, Google, and then you have Yahoo. I think you have Twitter. So very, very, very big actors which are present in a lot of applications. But you can have as well some trackers which are present in fewer applications, but which are really more problematic. There was one which they made a contract with the American Army, I think, or at least the part of government, to get data from Muslim people. We said it was a Muslim praying app. So it was not present in a lot of applications, but that could have really big consequences. Up. I think I'm basically done. Maybe I've gone a bit quick on some points. But I think I said what's the most important part. Our goal is really to give you information. Okay, there are trackers. They can be problematic on different aspects because for regulations, for legal reasons, that can be a problem if you have some in your applications. For ethical reasons, that can be a problem, obviously. Even for environmental reasons, there are some companies or groups which makes some index, some calculation to say, okay, you have a ecological grade for your application, and they say, okay, if you have more trackers, basically you will process more data, you will send more, your application will weigh more, and so it's basically bad for ecological reasons as well. So that's one bonus point. And I think I'm done, so we have more time for questions if you have some.
Yes, we do have some. We have a few interesting questions actually in the chat.
Cool.
Before we dive into the, so people seem to be very interested in how to protect from trackers. But before we dive into those questions, are trackers necessarily bad?
That's a good question. It depends on your point of view, obviously. That's a question we don't answer directly because we don't want to be in the position to tell, okay, this one is good, this one is bad. You can argue that some can be made for good reasons. I think the question you have to ask is it good for me or not? Like, okay, the company, they add some trackers for monetization, so for advertisement to make more money. I think it will be at your expense in some way. If they add some trackers to improve their app, at least what they say, okay, we need some information on how you can use it, just to know how you use it and then to improve it. Maybe you can say, okay, then it will improve the app. It will be a good thing for me. It really depends where they are stored, because for instance, for analytics, you have ways to make it a bit cleaner by hosting it yourself and by taking fewer data. So we cannot say, okay, all analytics are bad, for instance. That's why we try to give information about the trackers, where they are located, where they come from, who made them, and then you can decide against this. So that's a not an easy answer.
Okay, so that's quite a complete answer. If you keep screen sharing, we cannot see your face, which is a shame because you have a very
Oh,
beautiful
okay,
face.
okay. I will stop then. Perfect.
So that's a complete answer. Do you think we need more regulation around trackers? Is GDPR enough? Because vendors don't seem to be willing to share all the information and what they are doing with the trackers.
I think on the paper, GDPR could be enough because most of what we are seeing just does not comply with it, because they are processing data without your consent, and they cannot say this is for legitimate need. It's mostly isn't. We made an analysis. I think it was 1 year, just 1 year straight after the start of the application, to compare on our applications which were analyzed on Exodus and say, okay, this was the version before GDPR, this was the version after. Can we see some trend? Do we see that the trackers goes down? And actually it didn't. At least on the first year, it was basically the same. Some got more, some got less, but there was no significant trend. Maybe now it starts to move a bit more. I think, for instance, in France, the regulator says that they will take a deeper look at mobile applications, but I think they have so much work already with websites which already do not comply that it's pretty hard. So I think, yes, on the paper, it sounds good, but I don't think we need more regulations. We need to make the current one apply.
Okay, so the regulation exists, but is not properly enforced in your
Yep.
view. So if the regulation is slow or not properly enforced, and I want to protect myself, can I block the trackers, for example, on a rooted Android? So for people who are not necessarily tech savvy, rooted Android is what? Can you explain what rooted Android is?
I think rooted on Android, to make it quick, is like you allow you can enable some hidden features of your phone, which are restricted for your security at first.
It's a
And
sort
then,
of super administrator mode
yep,
on a phone,
yep,
to put it
basically.
simply.
First of all, you don't need to have a rooted phone to protect yourself. I think, as I said earlier, the regulation should protect you. But yeah, we know that currently it's not protecting you enough, so you can do something against it. We have on our website a couple of hints and good practices. I think the first one, it's not just, okay, I will use this tool, this will magically protect me and I don't have to think about anything else. The first question we say is that, okay, you need to question your usage to say, do I need this app or not? Can I change this app? Can I replace it with something else? Can I just get rid of it because actually I really don't need it? So that's the first question. That's obviously not enough because, for instance, sometimes you need to use the app. For payments, for banking applications, they push more and more that you need to use the Android application, the mobile application. So you have less and less the choice, so you need to use them. There are some apps which are helping you to block trackers. What they do is that they act on the network side. When we make the DNS resolution, which your phone will say, okay, I need to send data to graph.facebook.com. And you have an application on your phone which says, okay, I should ask my DNS to which machine does it send to graph.facebook.com. But this is blocked, so I will not even make the request. So they can make this blocking list. I think that works pretty well. I think that doesn't fix everything because it's really hard to block this without affecting the real usage of the application. But you have this basically like a ad block tracker on your browser. You can use as well more websites, mobile websites instead of mobile applications, like this PWA, which is like basically it looks like an application, like a native application, but it's basically a website. So it runs on your browser, and you can have their extensions which are helping you, like block trackers blocker.
All right. So interestingly, you mentioned the sort of application which is acting as a VPN, a local VPN. I think that's what you had in mind. to block the applications. But do you know how effective it is to have some actual DNS-based blocking solution? I'm thinking of Pi-hole, for example. Do you know if it's effective to block trackers as well? It's similar?
Yeah, I think it's similar. I think it's more for tech-savvy people, but I think it's similar. I think there is Next DNS, which is basically doing a similar thing, but you don't have to configure all your Pi-hole. It's a freemium version, so it's free until certain number of requests, and then you can pay a monthly fee. I think it works pretty well. It's hard to really know. You I mean, you would need to really make the check what data is sent without it to make the test, then with it, and you would need to do it for a lot of applications. That could be an interesting thing to do, and we didn't do it yet. But yeah.
Before we move to how you well, to more details about how you perform the lookup, etc., and if it's possible to circumvent it, let's finish with the user perspective.
Mhm.
Is this something for paranoid people? Does the government really want to track me? I have nothing to hide. I'm a nobody.
Yeah, I think that's a common question, which does not just apply to us, obviously, but like it's a question which often comes. I don't know if we still need to answer this question of I have nothing to hide. We saw, for instance, the the application for Muslim people. It's like, okay, I don't have to hide that I'm Muslim. I shouldn't be like ashamed of it or hide it. But you can see that it can be used um, to do wrong to you. So something which today seems legal and normal can be very illegal in the next is if you have a change of presidency or something like this. So you need to protect this personal data. So yeah, I think you should. I mean, you shouldn't need to make effort, but I think you need to do it because the regulators are not protecting you enough.
Right, sensible answer. So let's move on more to the to how you perform the research. Is it possible for a vendor, for an application maker, to do some sort of obfuscation to escape the static analysis you're doing?
Yeah, that's a limit of the analysis. The first one is that okay, we don't have an exhaustive list of trackers. So basically, if there's a new tracker which comes, we try to keep up to date with them, but we it's really fast market. And yes, you have some solution to actually hide it, to hide the classes you have in your phone. For now, we still can detect some, but yeah, we know that we don't detect 100. What we say is that, okay, we can have false negatives, but we shouldn't have false positives. So if there is a tracker which is listed on Exodus, then it is there. We are fairly confident. And if it's not listed, so it doesn't mean it's not there. So better be careful. Even if there is an app which says, okay, there is 0 tracker in it, obviously you cannot just say, okay, it's clean. We need to ask a bit more. And there are as well some more complicated situation. For instance, the Facebook app has like no tracker at all. Should you say it's good? I'll let you decide.
Right, very valid point. You talked a lot about classes. Are you tracking trackers in Android apps exclusively? Is it because Android apps are more open than iOS ones?
Yeah, it's basically for legal reasons. We couldn't do the same for DRM rights issue for Apple applications. Maybe that will change. You know, there is some regulation which was announced like a couple of days ago that for the operability issue between systems. So maybe there will be some change. Maybe there will be some other app store on iOS ecosystem. That's I think not for today. But yeah. So we cannot do it on iOS. What we say often is that okay, most of the time, people who are doing the iOS application, I mean, I think it's even more true today than before, is that sometimes it's like even one code base, it's like one project which is built and which does both applications. I think there is probably less and less part where there is really two really different code base where it's different parts. So what we say is that if you have a tracker on the Android application, most likely the same should be in the iOS part. There is no reason that they would say, okay, we need to make money on the Android app and not on the iOS one.
Okay.
Just to add a last remark on this is that that Apple added some, let's say, protection, this app transparency. I don't remember the last part of it, which tell you, okay, which tracker is in the application. I think it's good. I think it's mostly declarative for now, though, so that's the app developer just say, okay, I put this. I'm not sure there is any check. I think Google is moving towards something similar. So you can see changes in this. I think it's because basically people are more and more aware and more sensitive to this. So they want to be more protected, and that the market will move. I think it's moved slowly, but yeah, we can see good trends in this, but slow but good trends.
Right. And I heard about a project, maybe you know about it, which is called Irog, I think, or
Yep.
Pyroanalysis. So it's a sort of black box analysis. Can you tell us more about it, how it works roughly, and if it would solve the iOS problem?
Yeah, it's basically something which it's not done by Exodus Privacy, but it's an open source project. Like everything is open source, and you can find it on the internet and build it yourself. It's based on a Raspberry Pi, so like this mini computer that you can have at home. You install something on it. You take your phone and you connect it to the Wi-Fi, which is like the network which is sent by the Raspberry Pi, and every connection will go through the Pi before going to the internet. And then what it does is that it checks everything and it does some nice graphic and show you everything. You can use it to make dynamic analysis. You can do it on Android or iOS to see everything which is sent. The best way to do it is like to take like a phone that you make a factory reset on it. You uninstall everything. You just install one app, and then you can see that everything which is sent should be sent by this app. If you do it on your phone today, unfortunately, you should see a lot of things going out, and that's really hard to say. Okay, this one was sent by this app. This one was sent by this other app. So yes, it can answer to the iOS. It can actually answer to the question of which data is sent and where, but it's hard to scale. You cannot do it on that many applications that we made, and you cannot do it automatically so easily. We did it a couple of times. We did it for journalists. For instance, sometimes journalists are making a study on one particular app and they want to see what's going out. And so they ask us, okay, how can we do this? I think we made it one on Deliveroo Riders, which is like the application used by people who are delivering food, to see how the company was tracking on their employees, for instance.
Okay, and so access to privacy is a not for profit. Sorry, it doesn't mean it's for losses. Are you making money? And do you want to make money, or do you live just from donations?
Yeah, we live from donations. We have the chance to have great companies which are offering us some support. Basically, we don't pay for hosting support because Gandhi is offering us the machines where our application is running. We have as well some other companies offering us storage because we have a lot of applications that we need to store somewhere. It starts to be a bit too big nowadays. And then we have some punctual support, either from people who are donating money to us, or sometimes we're asking money for specific projects. When we remake the whole UI, we ask for money for this. When we made the new kit that we are doing now to help people to make this awareness training, we ask money specifically for this. And actually, we don't spend a lot of money. What we use it is like for sending people to conferences. So basically, the last 2 years were not so expensive for us in this aspect, unfortunately. And for some costs, but we don't have many. Everything, our finance is like public on our website. So we mostly need more contributions and people talking about us than actual money because we don't have much spending.
Excellent. Anything else you'd like to add to conclude this section on tracking the trackers? Anyway, for people who would like to help you, to volunteer, to give a hand, etc.
Yeah, I think first of all, go to the website, just check your apps, see if there is anything wrong. If you can download an application on F-Droid, you can see it easily. you can check our part on pedagogic content to tell you a couple of advice what to do. And if you have some free time, I think the first thing is like talk about it. If a company is doing something you don't like, try to speak up. Sometimes it works. And obviously, if you want to help, to contribute to our Android application or websites, every other code is freely available, so you can just check it. And we have a room which is synced in Elements, so you can reach us there. Everything is on our website, which is linked on the Exodus platform.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Pnu. So it was very insightful. I really appreciate all the work that Exodus Privacy is doing, especially in raising awareness, which is difficult, surprisingly difficult, and equally important. So now that we know that there might be a problem, or that there is a problem in certain case, we can move on to Gael from the E-Foundation, who tries to bring a solution to that problem. Is this right, Gael? Can you introduce what the E-Foundation does and what you are doing? We might have lost Gael.
I think, yes, I was muted, sorry.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Right.
Yes, perfect.
All right. So thank you very much first to invite me to this session. It's very nice to be with Pnu and Nad in this session. And to answer your question, so yes, we are trying to actually reduce the complexity of all the things for people who are not tech savvy, who don't have the skills, who don't necessarily understand everything with tech. First of all, we try to understand what the problems are. We try to explain what the problems are to people the more simple way as possible. And we try to produce the products that will by default solve as many problems as we find in operating systems and online services. What's the problem? So I think Pnu has talked a lot about the trackers problem. So I won't talk again about these problems because he knows much more well than me. But the problem is that there is the trackers and there are many other problems, specifically in a smartphone, either in iOS, on iPhone, or on Android. There are many features that send some of your personal data all the time to the net giants. So who are the net giants? We all know them. That's Google, that's Apple, that's Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft. And more specifically, Google has really built a business model around advertising and at a worldwide scale, addressing billion users. And what happens in this business model is that they want to make money. That's their main purpose. And but they want to make as much money as possible, and they are doing this by selling advertising. And when you want to sell advertising at a much higher price, you have to know your users. You have to know who you are targeting with advertising. And the best way to achieve this purpose is to collect as much as possible information about people. So what you are doing when you are using Google products, this is Google search on the web, this is Google Maps, but this is Android, an Android smartphone. You are giving away your personal data, and you don't know really about it. Of course, you always agree with the term of services of all those products and services, but most of the time you just don't read about this, and you say, okay, I want to use it, so I'm okay with this. And when you are okay with using the product, but also okay with giving away all your personal data. And what is this personal data? This is, for instance, your location, because your smartphone has a GPS sensor and other stuff that can detect your location all the time. So if you have this smartphone in your pocket, either iPhone or Google Android, you are going to send your position, your location, all the time to Google servers, and they know about this, and they can, learn a lot of things with this location. They can match some different locations, know that some people are together at the same place at the same time. This is really frightening. And location is only one of these. Of course, there are many things in Android operating system on the smartphone that send some personal data. For the first thing, nobody knows about this, but we have discovered this in Android. When you power on your smartphone in the morning, one of the first things it's going to do is to check that it can connect to internet. That's called the connectivity check. And this connectivity check is a ping against a Google server. So at the very first second you power on your Android smartphone, Google knows that you are awake and you are using your smartphone. And that's for billion users in the world. So they know about your web search, they know about your search history, they know what applications you are using, they know really many things. If you have a Gmail address, they scan all your emails because it's in, it's not encrypted, and they can learn a lot about you this way. So the Android mobile operating system is really a system that is collecting, most of your personal life all the time. And this is frightening. And to give you a figure, on Android, that's about 12 megabytes per day that is collected and sent to Google to profile yourself to sell advertising at a much higher price. So we think that this is not acceptable for many reasons. One is probably ethical. I think many of us actually think that it's not ethical, to fuel all this business model with personal data without even knowing about it most of the time. And we think that it can have, on the long run, some very rough consequences on things as important as democracy or even personal freedom. You know that they are using your data for advertising, but we don't know if they are using it only for advertising. They can use it for other purpose, and you don't know if at some time, if your data is not going to be leaked and at some point for any reason, because maybe they can sell it, or maybe a hacker can go in, can hack their servers and steal your personal data. So we really think that it's not acceptable to have those products that send all your personal data all the time. So what we are doing is that, first of all, we try to understand what's going on in smartphones and in online services, and also we explain to people and to users, and also we try to build some products that don't do this, products that by default are going to protect you and don't send all your personal data all the time to the net giants. So for 4 years, we have started to build a mobile operating system that is based on Android to keep the compatibility with mobile applications. And we also operate some online services that's a cloud based on open source software, when users can also store their data and and have some basic online services that all we use all the time, like the calendar, mail application, mail service, contact, a way to store your pictures and your files and edit your files online. All those things without any commercial purpose, of course. So we don't scan personal data, and obviously we won't send to anybody. So maybe I'm going to try to show you what we are doing within the operating system. So I'm going to share this now. Okay. So I think everyone should see a screen of a smartphone that is running iOS.
Yep.
So we have a very traditional operating system. Actually, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to have a product that everyone can understand and use immediately without diving into the settings and try to configure anything. So we try to do something that by default is going to protect people and offer them a digital experience, that is the most common as possible with all the tools that they are used to. So we what we do is that we take Android, because Android, the core Android at least, is open source, and we replace every piece of feature or source code that is sending some of personal data, and we replace many applications by equivalent that are good enough to use and that do the job, and that all of them are open source. We think that open source is the only way to ensure that the claims we have about protecting users' personal data can be checked by any expert, of course, with programming. So all the source code of this operating system is available online on our website, and every expert can check that what we are saying is true. And if by chance it was some of this was not perfect, they can tell us, and we discuss and we try to improve the system. That already happened in the past. So very quickly, so you see we have very common applications like we use all the time. So here, this is the clock application. We have a gallery where you can see your pictures. We have a calendar. So this is a demo account, obviously. We have a mail application, which is based off Canine Mail, which is a famous open source application. We have contact. I won't open everyone. We have the browser. So the browser is based on Chromium. This is not based on Firefox for mostly performance reasons, but not only. So this is from Chromium, and there is an ad blocker by default, and some specific settings to avoid sending all your navigation history to Google. And of course, we have replaced the default search engine by a Meta search engine that is using common search engine, but is anonymizing all your data, all your search. So you can configure which search engine you want to use. So this is on, you see the URL spot.cloud.global. So that is the web browser. There is a camera application, which is Open Camera, which is okay, it's landscape. All right. We have a maps application. So this one is an exception because it's not yet open source. It's a proprietary application, but but we discussed with the publisher, and they disclosed all the data transfer, and they explain how they deal with privacy questions, and so we think it's clean, and you have all the documentation online on ETIP Foundation. All right, and now we have also a store of applications. So this is an application that we have developed for more than 3 years now, and in this store of application, you can find all applications that you would find on Google Play Store, and also you can find all applications you would find on F-Droid, and also you will find many progressive web apps, because we think that progressive web apps is really interesting, because this is using all the standards of the web programming, and this is a good way probably to break free from the Google Play Store on the long run. And we had some features, like you see here. You can show all applications, or show only open source applications, or see only progressive web apps, right? And then obviously you can install any application here. And also we add something about trackers. So yeah, I'm looking for some newspaper applications, and you see, you're going to see, it's a bit slow now, that here, this application, we compute a privacy score actually. Here it's 0 on 10. And this privacy score is computing from permissions and trackers found in the application. And this is computed with the Exodus privacy tools, actually. So here we can see that in this application, you have all those trackers found with the Exodus privacy tools. So obviously that's a lot of trackers. So we do this for most applications, and we wanted to compute this privacy score. It's not perfect because obviously some applications like Facebook and some Google applications have a very good privacy score because they don't use third-party trackers, but they are themselves a big tracker. So sometimes it's questionable, but in most of the time it gives a good idea to users about the quality of the application, and you can see that if you look only for applications coming from F-Droid, which are open source application, most of the time they don't have any tracker, so that is really a good sign. Okay, so that is for the mobile operating system. So one of the features we want to introduce soon is a extended privacy feature that is going to give more control to our users about the trackers, but not only, they will be able to block trackers. With some granularity, they can choose, for this application, I want all the trackers blocked, and for this one, maybe only a few trackers, and for another one, no trackers will be blocked. So this is coming soon with other cool features about privacy. And we obviously have the online services. I won't tell you a lot about this. This is quite standard. This is accessible with a web browser, and this is synced with the operating system. One thing I wanted to say about, I'm stopping the screen sharing. One thing I wanted to say about the mobile operating system is that today you can install it for free, obviously, of course, on more than 200 different smartphones on the market. And the cool thing is that not only you have a private by design operating system, but you can also extend the life of older devices, which is quite cool, because if you, I don't know if I can show you, but I have an old Samsung Galaxy Mini S4 right here, and this is a device from that is 8 years old. So obviously you won't find any up-to-date stock Android for this device, but with iOS it just runs fine. So it's very interesting to see all device run fine with a modern operating system, with everything that users can expect today. So that's about the operating system. We also sell the operating system pre-installed on smartphones. We have some partnerships with different hardware makers like Fairphone, like Gigaset in Germany, like TerraCube in the US. And we also sell some refurbs smartphones. I think I'm mostly done. So yes, maybe I can tell you about what's going on in the future. So I've talked about the new extended privacy features in iOS that is going to be ready very soon now, and we are also working on adding more end-to-end encryption into the operating system, because we think that this is the ultimate way that people can protect their personal data, because when it's not encrypted, and it's also the case for us with our cloud, there is always a risk that at some point it's going to be accessed by someone for any purpose. So we think that the best answer on the long run with personal data is really about end-to-end encryption. Okay, I don't know about the time, but I think I'm done for now. Maybe we'll have some question now.
Yes, we do. We do have some questions, and we first have a congratulation, because somebody said in the chat that they usually don't like Android, but they really do like the way iOS looks like. So congrats. Someone else said, I can see you download iOS for devices not yet supported. It's possible to download it for devices not yet supported. How well does it actually work in your experience?
Is the question to download iOS for a device not supported and try to install it on the device? It's not recommended at all. Most of the time, it's not going to work. With an exception, actually, we are supporting one Android feature that is called Treble with the GSI format. This is a way to install iOS on any modern Android system. We did a test. We have several GSI images. You can find this on our website, and for instance, on this device that is a commercial device, Ulefone, that is not supported. I could install the GSI in a few minutes, and the system runs. Not everything is perfect. Sometimes there are some features that don't work. For instance, on this one, I think the Bluetooth didn't work, but it's a good way at least to try the OS. But you have to flash it on the smartphone, so it's not something I would recommend to everyone.
Right. There are other initiatives such as Linux on mobile. So you talked quite in great length about the problem with Google. Isn't it a bit surprising to use Android, a Google-made OS, as a base for iOS?
Yes. So there are two answers for this. The first one is that Android is based on Linux. You can even connect to it and and do some command line like on a Linux PC. So for me, it's good enough. I'm from the Linux world. I did a Linux distribution in the past, so obviously I would prefer a full Linux stack to make this project. But I'm a pragmatic person, and if we want to have something now for people, to give them something better and something, if they want to avoid using Apple and Google now and still have a decent, not a good word, but a normal digital life, there is no other option than forking on Android. Because we have to keep the compatibility with mobile applications. And on Linux, on a pure Linux stack, it's very, very difficult to keep this compatibility. There are some initiatives, but it doesn't work very well. Sometimes it's slow, and I think it's not today. I think the only way is with a fork of Android. But maybe tomorrow, and maybe thanks to the progressive web apps movement, it's going to be easier, and maybe we will change the core OS. But people have to remember that at the very beginning, Android was 100% open source system. It's not been created by Google. Actually, it's been purchased by Google. And as it was open source, they couldn't change all the licenses and proprietaries the whole. So they kept, the core open source, and they added some proprietary layers on the top of it to make it more proprietary. So, but we remove all the proprietary stuff.
Right. Moving a bit away from EOS itself and moving to the services provided by the E Foundation. You mentioned a meta search engine during your presentation. Is it something like Cerex?
Yeah, that's based on Cerex, and we work with them. Actually, we try to contribute upstream. But yes, absolutely.
Cool. And are you using exclusively open source for EOS and the services you provide too?
Exclusively, yes. At the exception, I talk about the Maps application that is not open source for now, but we are confident that it's going to change at some point. And we have, if it doesn't change, we have other options for the futures.
All right. Somebody in the chat said, I see you use MicroG. How private MicroG really is, my understanding was that it just re-implement Google APIs in an open source way, but then it would still send the data to them.
Yes. Well, so in a few words, MicroJ is like a compatibility layer with some Google services, like push notification, kind of things that you often need with application. So it's an implementation of the Google Play Services API. Of course, you have to connect to the Google servers to benefit from those services, but this is done anonymously. So you don't send any of your personal data or personal ID. They don't know who you are, when you are using this service. So I think this is an acceptable
trade-off
feature. Yeah. And for people who don't want it, you can always disable it.
Okay, and from my user perspective, when I use the e-services, I'm using software as a service. What guarantees do I have that you are not snooping on my data? So you mentioned end-to-end encryption a bit earlier. Are there legal guarantees, such as privacy policy, several documents that you would publish? Technical guarantees, such as end-to-end encryption that you are working on? Both, maybe?
Yes, that's today. That's a limit of the technology. Of course, we have some term of services, and we don't do evil things. But maybe I'm a liar. That's possible. So people have to trust me, or they can install the cloud services on self-host servers, because all the stuff is available for people who want to install it for self-hosting. Of course, it's encrypted on server, but it's server encryption. It's not end-to-end encryption. So at some point, it's true that some administrator can access to some user data. So we have some internal rules, etc., and we do like any cloud provider. But that's the reason why I think that in the end we need end-to-end encryption for as many services as possible. But this is a complex technological thing. If you don't want to, there is always a fight between some security features and usability. And when you gain in terms of security and privacy, sometimes you lose in terms of usability. That's the main concern to solve, because end-to-end encryption is known for years. But if you want to offer this offer this to a large audience, and that my parents, my children, you have to make things as simple as possible. And with end-to-end encryption, it's not that easy without learning a lot of manipulations.
Right. End-to-end encryption is something that can beat people pretty hard, because if you lose the keys, well, nobody else can give you access to the data, and you lost your data in practice, which can be a huge problem. So is there a market in the first place for privacy-minded people, or is this something just for tech enthusiasts who like to tell scary stories?
I think there is a clear trend today. I think that more and more people are aware of those concerns, and I'd say thanks to Cambridge Analytica and many other scandals, we all know that some elections have been influenced, at least, by some personal data manipulation at world scale. So this is really frightening, and I think more and more people are aware about this, and they are, the media talk a lot more than before about this. And more generally, I think that this goes into a more global trend, which is a quest by many users for better IT and more ethical IT. People, they like to eat vegan food or organic food, and they want to drive an electric car, and they also want to be protected with their personal data. So I think we are part of this movement, and so we try to provide them some products and services that fit those expectations. But I think that so we need more regulation, because today all this is because many big companies have taken very quickly some huge positions on the market because there was no regulation. So now regulation is needed.
Right. So E is doing its best to provide convenient services for people who are not necessarily tech savvy. It already does quite a lot. Do you think that E has reached its full potential, or are there more services or more devices than mobile devices that you'd like to offer to people?
In terms of mobile devices, we would like to release a tablet, because we have a lot of requests for this. But in terms of features and in the operating system and in the cloud, there are many things. We have, we could develop with more time, with more developers. So we haven't reached any limit, and I think that every day we have more ideas, and the limit is going away more and more.
Right, and we have another question in the chat. Can we have some insights about the future Murena phones? So we haven't talked about Murena so far, so to start, can you tell us what Murena is?
Yes, you know, at the beginning there was ILO, that was the name of the project, but we had to abandon this project name for some legal reasons. So we have urgently to find a new name. So the new name was E/E/. That's very cool, and many people like it, but also many people hate it, and it's very difficult to look for on the internet. So we had to find a new name, a new brand to represent the product and services. So that's Murena. That's the brand we have introduced last year, and today Murena is the brand for the smartphones we sell with iOS and the commercial part of the cloud services, because you know we have also some you have some storage for free, but if you want more storage, you can purchase a plan. So this is the brand name, the new brand name to describe those products. But the operating system itself today remains EOS, at least for now.
All right, and so the question was about, can we have some insights about the future Murena phones? Do you want to do some teasing? Like, will it have some hardware switches, for example, to be able to cut the microphone, camera, GPS, etc., at a hardware level?
So it's here.
Ooh.
I can't tell much today because it's an heavy development. We are porting iOS to this hardware platform. I think it's going to be quite cool hardware because not too expensive and good performance. But it's a first version, first iteration, and it's mostly a test to see if we can manage such project, because it's not that easy, and if you know, customers are interested in a device that won't have a big name like you know, OnePlus or Huawei or even Fairphone, or so it's more like a test for us this year. It's not here yet, but I think it's going to be interesting. And then if it works, then we can think about a more custom device, maybe with some kill switch, you know, other hardware kill switch for the camera, for the microphone, some kind of things. But this is not going to be for the first one.
All right. Is there anything you would like to add to conclude this section on empowering users with sustainable services and devices?
Yes, I think that for everyone who is watching this, I've got a mission for each of them. I think it's really important. All those questions, it's not just the tech things. It's not just you know, things for hobbyists or hackers. Or I think the consequences on our lives for everyone, for our children, on the long run is big, is huge. So I think that everyone here should have the mission to, you know, talk to others about this. Talk about what happens in smartphones, in you know, in digital products on the web, and tell about the consequences of all this, and make the more people as possible aware of those things.
Excellent. Thank you, Gael. I really like the vision and the fact that you are very pragmatic about what you are doing and trying to deliver devices and services for real life people who are not necessarily tech savvy. This is a bias we often have in our industry, to consider everyone is an engineer or everyone is a hacker. So I really appreciate the vision. Thanks a lot. We can
Thanks.
now move to Nad from Elements. Nad, are you out there?
I am indeed. Hello. And by the way, also just thanks to the really interesting talk so far. It's like it's really great stuff on both sides.
Excellent. So we can move on with you. So you are going to wear two hats today: the hat of a product manager and the hat of a designer. And we are going to discuss why using analytics in the first place. So let's start by the beginning. Does Element use analytics? And if yes, do all elements use analytics? Element Web, iOS, Android?
Yeah, sure. So the short answer is yes. The slightly longer answer is a couple of different things actually that's worth kind of covering. The first thing is it's actually really important that we do analytics cross-platform because people use multiple platforms. And actually, there's a bunch of insights, a bunch of learnings, a bunch of improvements where we want to make sure that we're not failing people pretty much as they kind of bounce between different platforms. So, we need to know we want to improve things around things like if you have a primary platform and that's kind of the platform that you use during the day because you're using that for work versus is there another platform that's more of a companion platform for you, and then therefore how can we improve things for you with those contexts. So actually tracking cross-platform is important for us. And then the other thing that's kind of just worth highlighting is that we use a platform called PostHog, which essentially is a bunch of client SDKs that let us do client-side analytics. But really importantly, we can self-host PostHog. And so we chose PostHog because it's open source. We can host the backend ourselves. We're not introducing like a third party for any of this. We're not introducing another data processor. And so when you use Element, we're only asking you to put trust in Element, and we're not trying to do anything with any third parties.
That's really interesting. The fact that we are self-hosting PostHog, because it means you, as you said, you don't need to send the data to a third party. But does Element really need analytics in the first place? One common complaint or one common suggestion is that user research would be enough to know what users want. Why are you using analytics?
Yeah, so user research is great, but it's one of many inputs that we need to consider, and we need to blend together lots of insights from lots of different places in order to kind of arrive at the best thinking, shall we say. And so like user research is really great. It's really useful for just general ideation, to do more general user discovery, to understand where people's kind of broad pain points are, but it's really tough to scale. It's quite expensive, either time-wise, just if we do moderated user testing, like sitting down with people and, everything from, there's a lot of careful effort that goes into the design of like a script when you're doing user testing, through to the time it takes to actually do the test themselves and their synthesis, etc. Where we need to acknowledge that on one hand that there's limits on how much we can do on all of that. So it's timely either with our time, or it's expensive, frankly, if we're going to be commissioning agencies or commissioning large amounts of paid users and things like that. So there's some limits over there. And separately, it doesn't scale across really broad really broad amounts of users. So as one example, recently we had a surge of traffic and surge of downloads with our mobile apps in Ukraine. And we actually noticed that people in Ukraine are struggling to get to meaningful conversations more so than our broader user base. And there's a bunch of different reasons that could be. It could be the fact that some people are throwing up custom home servers specifically for people in Ukraine to use. And so are there issues around the setup of that, where maybe there's issues in the workflows where you enter a custom home server, maybe there's issues with the specific home servers, maybe there's issues with our Ukrainian translations, and maybe that's why people are struggling to get going, or who knows. There's probably 100 different places where people could fail. And without any kind of insights into where these things are failing, we can't improve things. And so user research would never, it would never give us those insights that we'd need to materially improve, as that, as one example.
Right. So user research does give you a snapshot of certain narrow population, which is not necessarily representative of all the user base. And it doesn't scale because it would be too expensive to, and a bit privacy invasive actually, to monitor every user individually.
Yeah.
I think there is another use case for analytics that is not mutually exclusive with user research. Can you describe the whole cycle of adding a feature to Element, and does analytics have a role in that?
Yeah, sure. So I guess just to take it from the top, really. So we have a roadmap, which is our public roadmap. And if you go to element.io, in the footer, there's a link to there, and it's literally just a GitHub board, and GitHub's generally our source of truth. And the roadmap is just a prioritized list of ideas. It's just a list of, we think these are good ideas, and we think broadly we've kind of do a bunch of work to broadly stack rank them. And that roadmap kind of speaks to why we would build any given thing. So generally it's basically just proven demand. It's things that people are just like tearing our limbs off, saying like, we just need this yesterday. So an element today, like really high temperature things would be like multi-account, do not disturb, custom statuses, improved message management around marking things as unread, kind of things like that. And so that's kind of the why we would build any feature. But then separately, there also needs to be a kind of a why now, like why should we do this today rather than this other thing? And why should we do this today rather than in 2 years' time, or whatever it might be? And the why now is generally, it either just organically gets to the top of the list and we have the resources to do it, or we have enterprise customers that sponsor features and then they come to be. Or like things like that. Generally, the kind of two major reasons why we do something. And so if those are the kind of driving factors behind why we would even do any sort of feature, within that life cycle, we generally, it's really expensive to build the wrong thing. If we spent 2 years or 1 year building something that it turns out people don't want, it's actually just really easy to do that. And you do that enough times and you either end up with a terrible product that's not solving the right problems, or you burn people out and you run out of money and then suddenly the project fails at large. And so generally we want to do like a really small implementation of something first to prove a hypothesis. So maybe we ship something as beta, as a labs flag. We maybe, even with the matrix spec change proposals, we want to test out a couple of different technical implementations. We'll generally experiment rapidly, get to a place of confidence, and then execute cross-platform. So that's kind of the entire life cycle. And then I could speak to how analytics helps us with that slightly, if that's helpful.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so just as a part of that experimentation piece, really what we're saying is that every experiment's an idea. Like we think something's a good idea, but we also can't predict everything. And so we can be just very considered around adding a few pieces of analytics here and there that will let us prove or disprove a hypothesis. So, maybe we're looking at a new search experience and analytics might help us figure out if people are able to find results quicker or things like that. And so generally what we'll do is just think very carefully around like what it is that we want to learn and would analytics help us learn. And if they would, then we think very carefully about how we could do that basically as a part of that entire life cycle.
All right. So that's a very complete cycle. One of the appeals of Element is end-to-end encryption, and it wouldn't make sense to use end-to-end encrypted messaging if my phone was phoning home all the messages that it decrypts locally. So I guess you are not collecting everything that's happening on my phone. What is collected, and are you able to identify me personally?
Yeah, sure. So what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to go through the entire schema of like here's what we do and don't collect. If you want to do that, just take a look at our source code and just run the app, monitor the network traffic, use some of the tooling that we've been looking at today. And so if you want the nuts and bolts and the specifics, we've kind of set up the system so that you don't need to take our word for it in the first place. So I think that's kind of important to start. But what I kind of can do is talk about kind of the spirit of how we choose to collect things and the decision making that goes around how we do or don't collect something. So I think the first thing to say is that if you don't consent, we don't send anything at all. So out of the box, if you install Element on any platform or if you run it in your browser, if you don't accept or you don't consent to send analytics, nothing is sent home whatsoever. And that's kind of a fundamental promise that we're making to ourselves and to our users. And that's essentially, it's non-negotiable. And so that's the place to start from with all of this. And then secondly, once you do consent to analytics, essentially we go through pieces of information and we think about what we should redact entirely and what we think that we can hash. And when we think about what we can hash, we're asking ourselves, how can we avoid like pseudo-anonymization? So pseudo-anonymization is a huge problem where you think that you're anonymizing data, but actually a bad actor still has enough metadata, enough information that they can kind of fingerprint people, and then they can, effectively it's kind of security theater. And so we're essentially, those are the things that we're trying to avoid anytime that we instrument something. And then the other thing that I'd say on this is what we don't do, and I don't think we'd ever do this, is we don't do like auto capture. A lot of analytics packages have some kind of event auto capture thing where it's essentially just integrate this SDK and it'll just phone home as much as possible. We don't do that. We don't send home data. We don't collect data that we don't want. Our workflow is, as I was saying before, like we think of a hypothesis where we think collecting data could help us. And then we do the bare minimum to get confidence and to prove or disprove a hypothesis. And then, we'll strip out that tracking as soon as we don't need it, basically. So that's how we approach it pretty much. And that's how we choose what to identify, what to track and what not to track.
Okay, so you try to minimize the amount of data which is sent home, and I can refuse. So you are able to get an absolute number of people who accepted, because you can collect their data. Are you able to get the number of people who refused? So are you able to know what share, what percentage of users have accepted or refused to share analytics?
So accepted, yes, because once you accept, that data is shared, and it's really broadly. If we have a look at, our overall user activity that we get from other sources, we think it's about 9 to 12% per platform, depending on the platform, of people that accept. But also, if you hit, never ask me again or whatever, like we frankly wouldn't know that because the client, you've told the client don't tell Element anything, and so we just wouldn't know. But our best guess is about 9 to 12% of people accept or consent rather to analytics.
So the client is not even able to say, "I'm not allowed to talk to you." It's just says nothing if you refuse. Do you have a way to know if those 9 to 10% are representative of the actual users? Or if it's not, do you have something to compensate to try to get a better vision of all the user base?
Yeah, sure. So a couple of different things. So generally, if we're looking at kind of proving or disproving a hypothesis, we want some kind of statistical confidence in order to just get to a place of confidence. And so that can vary depending on what it is we're trying to prove or disprove, and so there's no golden rule around like kind of X number of users need to do something. We think we have to look case by case. So if it's a beta feature that's opt-in, that's already going to limit the amount of people that are going to be exposed to it. And so therefore, we might want to collect more data over time to gather more inputs and things like that. So generally, what we're just looking for is just to get enough of a volume of data in order to have confidence. And enough of a volume of data can vary slightly depending on what it is we're trying to prove or disprove. But we essentially kind of accept that this is a sample, like a subset of users, and then we want to extrapolate from there. And then otherwise, we're just looking for kind of leading indicators, I guess. Like, we're not looking to exhaustively understand everything. We're just looking for like, hey, we're changing this thing in the app. How could we prove that it's a good change? And how can we prove that it's a good change with facts rather than opinions? Because even internally on the team, but more widely in our community, like, everyone's quite passionate with their opinions. But the reality is you have a conversation with someone and you're dealing with a research sample size of 1. But actually we build things for tens of millions of people. So so we're just looking for ways to get statistical confidence and to just to get more facts, really, rather than opinions.
So you do have an interest in collecting analytics because it gives you a more factual view of what features are being used, what features are problematic, etc. But me as a user, do I have an interest in sharing analytics with you?
Yeah, so it's just one of many inputs that we use to help us improve the app. So just to take a really simple example, if the app crashed on load, we'd see that and it just didn't load. We'd see that as a really kind of functional bug. Like, it's quite binary. Like, does the app load, yes or no? Does it run? And we'd know which of those outcomes is good versus bad. And we'd kind of accept that a crash report would be a healthy thing to share with a developer. That if they know that it's crashing on your device, then a developer can respond to that. They can investigate it. They can reproduce it. They can fix it, and then ultimately, that bug would be fixed. But actually, we have the same kind of bugs and sort of deficits in different areas in the critical thinking. Like, there's the product thinking around, should this feature exist in the first place? How does it work? Should it, what's the scope of this feature? There's all of the design thinking around the user experience. And all of those things can be imperfect too. They can, to take that example of something not running or whether something works, a feature might technically exist in the app and it might technically be stable. But if it doesn't solve the right problem, or if it doesn't help you communicate better, like, the feature doesn't work. And so analytics, in a lot of sense, is getting more visibility on whether things are working in the same way that crash reports tell you if a feature runs. This is the feature working for you as a user? And it's just another input for us to get a better steer on that, basically. And so sorry, you can not share if you want. That's absolutely fine. But I think if you want the app to get better, the app would get better the more visibility we have on these kinds of things, basically.
I quite like the vision of seeing analytics as a sort of user brain crash report. It's an interesting view. You told earlier that you try to minimize the amount of data collected because of the self-hosting. Having too much data on a user can be a liability because you become responsible for it. And if something happens, because nothing is 100% secure ever, if something happens, you are the person responsible for it. But still, would it help you to have more privacy invasive analytics? You have intensive incentives to do it.
Yeah, so I used the word promise earlier, where I think I said, we kind of make promises to ourselves and promises to our users. That's not something that we think about breaking lightly. Like if part of the promise of using Element is that we respect your privacy, we would be crazy to break that. Like, why would we shoot ourselves in the foot? And so that's kind of one of the primitives of all of this, is that, to begin with, we've incentivized ourselves to want to work towards this outcome. Like, kind of another way to look at it is that, there's other companies that financially incentivize themselves to want more data. And essentially there's entire platforms where everything that they do is funded by advertising. Like ultimately, even if it's not directly in that product, it's the case of like hoarding data in order to inform like other advertising networks that may or may not be owned by the same parent company, whatever it might be. And just fundamentally, we haven't incentivized ourselves with any of those things. We've incentivized ourselves with succeeding by being privacy preserving. And so in order for us to want to work against that, there'd have to be an incentive for us to kind of work against ourselves. And so that's kind of how we've set up the system for ourselves, basically. So it'd be really strange for us to do that, basically.
We had a quite interesting question in the chat. So there are those community testing sessions that are being carried from time to time, where some people gather in a call and do test the product and are able to say explicitly what they found weird, what was a bit surprising for them. Do you have some time to explain how analytics allow you to draw conclusions without having this quality of information, without people explaining explicitly what was bothering them?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I spoke a little bit at the beginning about essentially blending different input sources. And so all of these things are complementary, and we don't make decisions based on just one of them. And so if we're designing a new feature, if we're redesigning an existing feature, there's a plethora of things that we'll look at in terms of user feedback. Some of it might be quite rudimentary, like hallway testing, where we prototype things. We literally grab people, friends, family, colleagues, like in hallways or virtual hallways, so to speak, and show them things. Other things are things like the community testing. With community testing, we often get the best depth of feedback, but we also need to temper it slightly with, a lot of the community are kind of blessed and cursed with knowledge, where they have the most committed use cases with like the most specific kind of needs. And so we need to make sure that our solutions facilitate all of these things, but also they don't impede people that are like less technical, for example. And so community testing is really, really great for that. And then we do other kinds of testing as well, like paid user testing, where we literally pay like people that are essentially lay people who are generally kind of young professionals or people that are tech savvy, but they're not Element users, but we literally pay them using other platforms to run through the app and to test kind of workflows. And then we have things like analytics once things actually make it to production or on our development channels. And we don't make a decision based on one of these. We blend across all of them. And we know that a community user has a different worldview even outside of Element, which they then carry forward when they use Element to a layperson, or compared to someone that's a government employee that's maybe one of our enterprise customers, and so on and so forth. So all of these things are useful and they're all complementary. But that's kind of how the community testing fits into the broader testing and the broader insights picture.
All right. I spoke with developers and they told me they use Exodus Standalone in the build process for Element Android. Does it make sense to use tracker detection software if you want to have analytics in the first place?
Yeah, so I guess this comes down to how you're defining a tracker. And so I think Exodus Standalone is really good for defending against third-party trackers. And I think there's also things around, there's risks around if you have a dependency on like a third-party module or package, and then if they then introduce other third-party dependencies unexpectedly. I think it's really great for tracking those kinds of things, and those are things that we take really, really seriously, and that's why we use them. And I think if we look at first-party analytics and versus third-party trackers, I think there's actually quite a quite a distinct difference between those. And so that's that would be my rationale for why why it's okay to have both, basically. And again, if you don't trust Element as a first party analytics, just don't consent, and that's okay. Like, we don't expect everybody to share analytics, and maybe you've got a specific threat model, maybe you're running a custom home server, and maybe you're in a country where this is actually really important, and maybe you don't want to send things to a self-hosted backend, and that's completely okay.
Right. So Element is doing quite a bit of work to minimize the amount of data which is collected to the strict minimum. It's self-hosting a server, which makes reduce in a way the amount of data shared with third party. We still live in a world with a pretty tight regulation, including GDPR. Do you know if Element has a legal document to tell me what's going to happen with my data?
Yeah, so if you go to element.io/legal, that's essentially a landing page that then lets you springboard into every type of policy we have and every legal document that we have. So, the reality is slightly complex because the privacy policy for a home server might be different to the privacy policy to the app, which might be different to the privacy policy for an integration manager, and so on and so forth. And so in order to help navigate that, we've just put together that page as kind of the springboard. And so if you have a specific question or a specific thing that you want to learn about how one service is treating data, it's best to just look at the kind of specific documents from there.
Excellent. Is there anything you want to add to conclude this section?
Yeah, I guess just if I could wave a magic wand and kind of think forward, where I really want to get us to is a place where analytics doesn't have to be a dirty word. I think there's an opportunity for us to do something that's privacy preserving, do something where we're not, we're not expecting 100% of people to consent to it. But we should be able to find a way to do this in an ethical way. That means that we can improve the product and get to the standard of first party closed source solutions, pretty much. And that's the goal. And so this isn't the only thing we're doing, and so we're not doing as much in this area as I'd like today. But moving forward, we'll be spending more time increasing transparency on all of this, on all these processes, improving documentation, writing blog posts, just kind of going over these kinds of things. And we'd just like to figure out how to do this ethically and sustainably, basically.
That's a very noble goal. So that concludes the episode. I hope this episode gave you a good view of the whole story about analytics and the different points of view. My key takeaway from it is that analytics are nothing but a tool, same as a knife. You can use it to craft nice things or to harm people. What we need right now is more transparency on which app and services have those knives and what they can do with it. And we need alternatives for everyday people. So analytics can be useful as they can be harmful. It's up to each vendor to earn the trust of their users. Non-profits like Exodus Privacy are crucial to keep users informed. Companies like Marina are vital to provide alternatives for people who care. And companies like Element are, of course, super important to show that there is a way to do it properly. This concludes this episode. I see you next month. See you around, Open Tech.